Curtis.
David Curtis. God almighty. Well, welcome to part two of this feature with David Curtis. Now, in part one, we were talking about the aspects of spiritualism, and not spiritualism, but high conceptualities in the East and your background, and there's a strong UFO connection there.
Right.
But before we hit the UFO button on this part, you did know you knew a lot about Sekhmet, the goddess, the lion goddess. And before we leave that other section, I'd like you to talk about that if you can.
Right, okay. I talked about Imhotep being the kind of Buddha of his age, the genius of his age, the Christ of his age. So throughout Egyptian civilization as we know it in the dynastic period, which lasted from 3100 to 30 BC, when the Romans took over from Cleopatra. She was the last pharaoh. Imhotep was celebrated as the master. He was the master because he incarnated the one, Thoth, the one. So Thoth is thrice great Thoth, which is Hermes Trismegistus, which is the founder of the Hermetic art. So I see the step pyramid as the symbol of the Hermetic art. Now, the god of Memphis, which was the original capital, which united Upper and Lower Egypt, the Delta and the Nile Valley. That's the first time where they were united, and you had the double crown, which the pharaoh wore in the capital, Memphis. That was the city of Pa, the god Pa. He's really the blacksmith. He's a former blacksmith. And he was the god of the step pyramid, right? So Pa was the god of the step pyramid, and the Greeks, when the Greeks took over through Alexander the Great in 332 BC, that lasted. The Ptolemaic realm lasted from 332 to 30 BC. Well, Pa is the god of the step pyramid, and his consort, his mate is Sekhmet, the lioness goddess. She's the lioness goddess, and so Imhotep, the genius, is supposed to be the son of Pa and Sekhmet. So the genius, Buddha, Christ, the one is supposed to be the son of Sekhmet, which is really saying that Horus is the son of Isis and Osiris. It's the same thing. Osiris, Isis, Horus, the triad would be the same thing as Pa, Sekhmet, and Imhotep.
The thing is that people are getting energetically charged, or some kind of energy coming from the statue itself, and as if the god is actually talking to people in the current time right now.
Which statue are you referring to?
There's one of the ones, I'm referring really to the work of Nancy Pollet, or Pollitt, who I interviewed. She did a presentation at the Glastonbury Symposium, and she repeated it here a day or so ago. But others have written into her saying that they've touched one of the currently active statues, one of the whole statues. I think one of them's in the British Museum, and it has given them an energy to really start communicating in some way on this subject.
Yeah, well, the Egyptians did think that the statues were the house of the god. That the early Hermeticists, that they contacted the statues. Now, I've had contact with the statue, but not in a physical statue. I've contacted in a vision. I had contact with the statue, and I would say it was a figure.
Sekhmet. Sorry.
No, Sekhmet, but with the golden mask, it would be related to Sekhmet, because Sekhmet being the lioness, The lion, the solar energy of Ra, the solar energy, the golden solar energy of Ra, i.e. the gold, it is the lion. So when you're initiated and you're a pupil of Thoth, the master, when you're initiated in the Book of the Dead, in the underworld, then you become the solar lion king. So the lion is always the solar lion. The lion is the solar lion. So Isis would be Sekhmet, the lioness, and Horus would be the solar lion king who incarnates Ra. So I had my most important contact in my spiritual life that revealed to me certain things about my bloodline. I had that vision in 94 in Lancaster. I had the vision of a statue, but it was more of a figure that spoke to me telepathically. It had a golden mask and it had big black oval eyes. It had the alien eyes, but it was set in a golden mask. And I stood in front of it and I turned into a being of light. So I was in a shower of golden light. I just turned into this being of light and entered a state of bliss. And when I came out of that state, I was given a red cube. I was given a red cube. And in the red cube was the work I was to do many years later, 10 years later. And all of my work came out of the red cube.
Now, what's this red cube, is it?
Yes, right. So when I was given this red cube, I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea what that meant. But just before the vision, before I actually saw the statue, I had the thought of my grandfather. Now, my grandfather, I was born in my grandfather's house in Salford, Greater Manchester, and his name is Garnet. His name is Garnet. So when I built my library up in 2002, in about 2006, I did research and I found out that the Garnet is a cube. The Garnet, my bloodline Garnet family, I was born in the house, is a cube. So the Garnet belongs to the cubic crystal system, and there are 7 crystal systems. There are 7 crystal systems like the hexagonal, emerald, etc. My mother's name is Esmeralda Garnet, so she combines the emerald and the garnet, Esmeralda Garnet. The Garnet has 5 end members, 5 end members. One of those end members, Pyrope, is known as the fiery eye. So the red Garnet is known as the fiery eye. That's the third eye, the Kundalini third eye in Tibetan Buddhism. It's known as, it's perceived as the Garnet. And so it was I had the vision in 94. In about 2006, I found out that the Garnet was part of the cubic system. So that's my links to my bloodline. And in the cube was the work I was supposed to do here. All my writing is coming out of the cube. So I was given the cube, part of my bloodline, and it's coming out. And one of the end members is Pyro, fiery eye, which is the third eye. So if you have the third eye, you can see through the veil, you can see through the matrix, which means you can, you're not limited by knowledge. You have a certain power over knowledge. You can discriminate. One of the powers is discrimination. And another of the end members is carbuncle. I don't know if you know the history of the carbuncle, but that's the stone at the base of the horn of the unicorn. So you've got the white fabulous beast unicorn, and you've got the third eye at the bottom of the horn. So you've got the spiral horn growing out of the forehead. And in the Grail legend, it says that the carbuncle is at the base of the horn. And those that are called to serve the Grail have their name written on the carbuncle, and that's the stone of the phoenix. It's the fiery bloodstone. And in the Grail legend of Parzival by Wolfram von Eschenbach, it says that the Templars look after the Grail in the Grail Castle, and those called to the Grail have their name from childhood, even before they're born. At childhood, they've got their names written on the stone, on the Grail stone, and that's the stone of the Phoenix, and that's the third eye, or the Eye of Horus. That's the Eye of Horus.
And of course, that references the two sashes, Masonic sashes you've got either side of you as well. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a connection there, just to remind people from part one.
Yeah, that's right. And so my bloodline, I'm looking at it symbolically, but my bloodline, I was born in the House of the Garnets, and I realized my own mythology, I realized my own life story, and I finished it in 2014, and that's all related to the red cube. And the red cube was given to me by a solar being with the alien eyes. So I was given that red cube by an alien figure that spoke to me telepathically.
And you can't identify that alien figure?
Well, it's a solar being, so it's in the seventh heaven. It's in the seventh level of the visionary level. So I was in a visionary level. I became a being of light. And in one of the Book of the Dead, of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, it says that the followers of Horus, and Horus is the initiate, he's the pupil of the Master Thoth, the One, they're called beings of light. So the followers of Horus, the solar energy, you're called a being of light. So if you're initiated as a being of light, then you're at one with Horus. And Horus is the Eye of Horus and the Phoenix and the Grail Stone, etc.
Interesting. Now, you've written books on this, just to recap very briefly, and you're publishing more papers, and this is why you're contacting us here now.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get my work noticed, because I've got my own, it's my own personal interpretation. And I don't think anyone else has said that Imhotep is actually Hermes Trismegistus. And because he incarnates thrice great Thoth, and that's Hermes Trismegistus. So the step pyramid, to me, is a memorial of the Hermetic art, and that's the source of alchemy. Because it's the art of the Black Land. The Black Land is Egypt, and Osiris is the Black One. He's known as the Black One, and Isis is the Black Goddess. So it's all documented in my 9 books.
Okay, I think we'll leave that particular subject for now.
Right.
But you've been on Project Camelot. You've been with Amash, or the ET Newsroom. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I'm in the process of having Joanna Somerville come and interview me, and she's got problems with her kind of setup, so I don't know what the problems are.
Well, we don't want to bore the public with details on technical things, but who else? Yes,
I'm with Miguel Connor on Eon by Gnostic Radio. I've been on there. And
sorry, the Skype was a little bit of a glitch there. Could you just repeat that?
Yeah, that's Miguel Connor, the Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio, and I've been on with Jason Horsley on horticulture. And Jason Horsley is quite an interesting person, but anyway, so they're the 3, and I felt I wanted to get my work out there, but further my own journey. So I'm hoping to discover what lies behind that statue. So that statue is like the key. It's like the cornerstone, the statue, and of course the cube is the cornerstone. So when in the Gospels it says that the initiates, the disciples, ye are more or less spiritual stones, living stones, to build the spiritual house. and Jesus is the head of the corner. He's the cornerstone. So in effect, you might say Imhotep is the cornerstone, or Buddha is the cornerstone, and you're kind of imitation. So the cube, the stone, the cube, you become living stones of the spiritual house that you've got to build.
So you're taking a step from this ancient mysticism into modern day ufology.
Exactly. Because I think the UFO phenomenon, I follow Jung in this, I think the UFO phenomenon is the key to science and religion. I think the UFO phenomenon is a kind of synthesis and transcendence. And I think that, like the Elohim, there are a number of intelligences, whether you call them the Ennead or the Company of Nine. But I think that the Ennead are the ones that orchestrate the matrix. They orchestrate. They're working from the archetypal Platonic realm beyond the stars, as it were, and they're projecting the identities of you and me symbolically. So everything in consciousness is a form of identification, and we're living that. We're our literature, our language, our consciousness, our symbols, our numbers. We're living that. We're living embodiments of that symbolic code that's coming from an archetypal code. So the archetypal code is beyond consciousness, and it has the ability to project. It creates consciousness. I think it grafts it onto the animal kingdom. So you've got consciousness, psyche grafted on, and then you have living entities, like we're living entities. We're living the program. We're living the program. And the point is, we don't know our destination. We don't know what we're being programmed for. Right? But if you look at the tree, if you look at a tree, then the tree bears fruit. And I think that we bear the fruit. And my question is, what is that fruit? What is the purpose? What is the fruit of the tree of life? Because if we eat of the tree of life, then we have eternity. If we eat of the tree of knowledge, good and evil, then we're in a fix. We're in the matrix. We're in the field of knowledge.
Well, that's actually some indications about the basic mathematical algorithm which generates that spiral. Is that you never get to that point. The tree of life, you get closer and closer and closer, but you never get quite there. You never quite make it. But there's another philosophy which I can't name, where the mathematics is slightly skewed back to where it should be, and you will get there. So that we could be dealing with a never-ending story, which is leading us literally down a rabbit hole.
The Thoth, the one, the master, he wears what the Golden Dawn, the occultists call the lemniscate. He wears the lemniscate. The Magus, the first card of the tarot, he wears the lemniscate, which is the infinity sign, the 8. That's the fixed stars. They're the constellations. That's the spiral. You're caught in the loop. It's like a loop.
Yeah, Mobius loop, never ending.
Yeah, it's a never-ending loop. So you're reborn, 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 reborn. It's the eternal recurrence of Nietzsche. It's karma. The planetary fates. You're caught in the matrix of the planetary fates under Saturn, right? Because Saturn is the
Saturn.
Yeah.
Moon landings that didn't happen. Saturn V. 2001: A Space Odyssey. Saturn was the key planet, not Jupiter, in that story. Saturn programming us. The strange symbol on the top of Saturn, which apparently has disappeared after certain activities. Allegedly a prison for Nephilim, reptilian stuff that could could be coming here, taking control, all sorts of stuff like that. I mean, okay, let's get into the UFO side of things. You talked about meeting 2 reptilians.
Yeah, well, can I just say...
Or meeting, okay.
Yeah, can I just say the Lemmasey is a infinity sign. In Egypt, that same headdress is worn by Thoth, the moon god. So the infinity sign relates to the waning and waxing of the moon. If you're in the underworld, you're under the spell of the moon. You're under the spell of the sorceress, the black goddess Isis and Thoth.
But some people say that that's the whole point about the moon, is it's reflecting the energy from Saturn to deliberately help imprison us here.
Yeah, well, if you look at that, so the phases of the moon are the waxing and the waning of the moon. You're caught in that loop. Unless you solve the problem, unless you decode your own life story, unless you decode the karmic trap, the matrix. And then the full moon, so it's like a cradle. The headdress is a cradle. So you have the sickle moon, which is the crescent moon, would be the infinity sign. And then the moon would be the circle, the one. So you have the infinity sign, and then you have the one. Thoth is the one, and he's the master of infinity. He's the master of knowledge. He's the master of self-knowledge. He's our master. So he wears the Lemmasey, and so he's in control of the fixed stars. He steers if you go into the starship, he's the helmsman. He steers you along the Milky Way to the constellations. So that's the infinity sign, and then you have the one cradled in the infinity sign, and that's the Lemmasey. That's the headdress of Thoth. So, shall I begin my first UFO encounter?
Yes, please.
Right. So I'm a hippie. I'm a hippie from 67 in America. I meet Timothy Leary. In New York. I go to his house. I meet him. Right? In Millbrook. Have you heard of Millbrook? I've met him in Millbrook.
Well, I've heard there's a section of Belfast called Millbrook, but continue.
Yeah, well, I drop out of college. I leave my marriage. I leave everything, and I'm living in Poughkeepsie on the Hudson River. Just north is Kingston, and that's where Bob Dylan and the band. That's where they cut their music. Just up the river a little bit.
Are you saying there are energetic properties to those locations, which is why you were there?
Yeah, well, that's where IBM is. Poughkeepsie is the IBM. That's where the Apollo was and everything.
Consciousness-controlled computer system, which is alien-derived and a Trojan horse technology.
Okay, so I'm
in Poughkeepsie. Does that resonate?
Yeah, it does resonate. But I have no knowledge of UFOs. I was in America 8 years, and I never heard of any UFO. I never saw a UFO film. Nobody talked about UFOs. In fact, I didn't even know about UFOs, and I was there from 61 to 69. So anyway, I'm in Poughkeepsie. I dropped out, and I have this experience. I'm transported into this other dimension. So I'm walking around Poughkeepsie, but I'm in another dimension.
Explain that.
When I talked to Kerry Cassidy, I told her that when I was at university in Long Island, which is Long Island, it's an extension of Manhattan, New York. So I'm in Long Island, Stony Brook University, where Dan Burrish was, that Kerry Cassidy interviewed, Dan Burrish. I think he brought in the idea of the yellow cube and Orion, which is which is the constellation of Osiris or Sahu, and that means spiritual body. And so I'm there, and I'm about to drop out, and I'm into classical music, but I hear about this Way Out concert. I'm not into drugs, I'm not into hippie, I'm not into counterculture, and yet And yet, the place I went to, Stony Brook, was the twin of Berkeley, where all the hippie stuff was beginning in Berkeley, California, and Haight-Ashbury and everything. I didn't know about that. So I hear about this strange concert. I see people painting their faces. So I go along to the concert. I walk in, and the soft machine are playing for about an hour. And then the Jimi Hendrix Experience comes in, and I'm really moved by it. I really love the music of Jimi Hendrix. So Kerry Cassidy thinks that's a trigger. She thinks it's a trigger because the rock scene comes into my life a lot. So it's a trigger to me having this change of consciousness. She thinks it's one of the triggers to do with my change of consciousness.
Now, this is important because one of our other researchers here, Kathy Morgan, has done a lot of work on that. She had a major experience at a concert.
Yeah, I'm interested in Kathy Morgan. because I think she knows a lot about what I mean.
A lot of research on this.
It's fascinating, yeah. I'm very interested because I've been to Glastonbury and all of that. So anyway, I drop out. I had this Jimi Hendrix Experience. I drop out. I move into another dimension. So I'm walking around in Poughkeepsie.
Sorry, what do you mean by moving into another dimension? What conceptually are you talking about there?
If you take a drug, if you take psilocybin, a psychedelic drug, like in Castaneda, Castaneda, the world around you is the same, but it then takes, it's like a fantasy fairyland. It becomes like a fairyland, right? So everything's the same, but it's a fairyland. Well, I hadn't taken drugs. I took drugs later, but I hadn't taken any drugs. And the world I was living in was like a fairyland. And I began to meet, I was very bourgeois, and I began to meet very strange people. I've never such as hippies that came from California with long hair, riding bicycles down an IBM city, an IBM town, riding a bicycle, and they had this weird shop with all like surreal stuff, and it's called a head shop. So, and then I met this couple, and they gave me the Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda, my first spiritual book that I read. And it didn't impress me. And then I moved across the river Hudson. I moved inland about 20 miles to New Paltz, State University of New Paltz, and that's where David Wilcox studied in the 80s. Into synchronicity. And of course, my friend is the world expert on synchronicity. He's a world expert, my friend now. So I'm in New Paltz. I tried to go do art at New Paltz. I dropped out after 3 weeks. I couldn't get into it. I'm right in the hippie scene. They come from Ken Kesey, the Magical Mystery Tour. They come in their school buses. They've come there, and I'm right in the heart of it. I take some hashish. I only took one LSD and all of that.
Did the hashish affect you? Did it have any?
Yeah.
I mean, if you take tobacco, have you smoked? I mean, does that have an effect on you?
I've never smoked. I've never drank. I don't get off on drink or smoke or anything. I took a bit of hashish, and as I say, I met Timothy Leary. I went to his house. I don't know what we talked about, but anyway, I spent the afternoon there at Millbrook.
I mean, are you aware? Sorry, are you aware since that of the various MK Ultra programs and things involving Timothy Leary, the CIA, psychotronic, all that stuff?
I know something. On the Kerry Cassidy interview, I talked about Arthur Koestler. I mean, it's a big, long story. We could talk about another time, really. But he visited Millbrook, the big house in Millbrook, where Timothy Leary had all these people on LSD and everything. And lots of important people went there. And one of them was Arthur Koestler. And he set up the first chair of parapsychology in Britain at Edinburgh University. It's called the Arthur Koestler Chair. And, I was in the Society for Psychical Research. I was part of the Religious Experience Unit in Oxford University. And Arthur Koestler did a synchronistic survey, a national survey with the founder of the Religious Experience Unit in Oxford, and his name was Alistair Hardy. And I believe that's where Kathy Morgan comes in. I think all these people are into eugenics, they're surveying people, they're doing all this synchronistic study. I think it's the same process.
Well, this is transhumanization. This is this cessation of human beings as free individual people to a hive-controlled, subhuman, cybernetic race.
Yeah, well, the point is, Miles, that it's well known in the spiritual tradition that when you go into these out-of-the-body states of mind, like Jung's Red Book, I suppose you've heard of the Red Book, where Jung...
In the event that I may have not have heard of it, maybe people watching, so if you could explain maybe that a little bit, generally when you mention things like that.
Well, Jung was born in 1875, the same year as Crowley and the same year as Gurdjieff, more or less. And that was when Blavatsky and Olcott set up the Theosophical Society in 1875, and that's where all the psychic revival and the Society for Psychical Research all came out of there. And so Jung was born in 1875. From 1812, for a number of years, he developed a method called the active imagination. It's a form of meditation, and you can leave your body and go into a visionary realm and meet all these entities. So in his Red Book, which never became public until only a couple of years ago, the Red Book, in his Red Book, he did all...
Sorry, could you just state that title, the Red Book by, and where do you get it?
Yeah, the Red Book is by C.G. Jung. You can get it on Amazon, and there's a paperback. It's quite cheap, but the coffee table edition, massive coffee table edition, is about 150. But anyway, he documented all these entities that he met in his visions, in his out-of-the-body visions, and documented. My point is, what I mentioned earlier, is there's a warning, there's a spiritual warning that don't get caught up in states of mind, entities, whether, however high they are, even the figure of Jesus or the figure of Buddha, entities. Be careful of entities like, like the blue avians, the reptilians, and all these different constellations. They're still within the matrix. In the Gnostic tradition, they're still under Abraxas. They're under the power of Abraxas.
Explain that. Now, this is very serious because I have to say again, Stephen Greer is asking people to accept beings and entities into their bodies without any condition.
No, right. We're a human being. We're one. I believe we're a human being. We're one. And I believe we're born as divine children. We're divine children. And I have an experience that I can mention sometime, that my experience of being a divine child at the age of 2, and something was revealed to me. The red cube was revealed to me, not in the form of the red cube, but in the form of a red fire engine. So my favourite toy, the red fire engine, was actually given me as the red cube at the age of 2. But I think we're all like divine. I think we're all one. We're part of the one. And we incarnate and we're in the matrix, right? But the matrix is the cosmos. The matrix, you can say there's two things we should think about. There's the psychic matrix and there's the physical matrix. And they work synchronistically like the loop, like the infinity sign. So psychophysically, the psyche and the physical world are both part of the conditioning process. So even if you went to the stars, even if you left your body and you met all these gods and goddesses, you're still in the matrix. So when you go to church, you're in the matrix. When you're a mystic, you're in the matrix. You're always in the matrix. So the archetypal level, the intelligence is behind the entities. That archetypal code projects, like Lily said. Lily said in the center of the cyclone and everything that there's a kind of meta program you can get access to the meta program, and Leary he was very into the meta program.
Explain.
Yeah, well, when you and I take spirituality seriously and we start to study magic and occultism and self-knowledge, then we instigate in ourselves the meta program, which is like the symbolic code. So we have intuitions, we have visions, we have dreams and everything. So we instigate that. Then there's a super meta, you could call it the self meta program. The self is the one. So we want to connect with the one, the self, the true divine child within us, the Horus child within us. So we have to decode our life story. We have to have a life review. We have to decode the symbolic code, but we need the symbolic code to get to the one, the archetypal thing. So what we can say is we're given the poison of the tree of knowledge. So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is the poison that we need to cure. We're poisoned by knowledge, and yet we can't get anywhere without knowledge. So the Gnostic serpent that gives Adam and Eve the poisonous apple, the apple of Venus, to poison you, that poison means that you've got to leave paradise and come into the physical psychic realm, from the spiritual realm to physical realm. If we go to the Gnostic template, the earth and hell, Tartarus, which is in the earth, hell, you've got hell, the earth, the planets, ruled by Saturn, you've got the sun, you've got the fixed stars, the whole zodiac, the whole cosmos is still within the matrix, and encircling the whole thing is like a kind of wall. A whole wall around it is the serpent, the Ouroboros, the serpent biting its own tail. So that's again the guardian of the threshold, Abraxas, Draco, the dragon, the third eye. It's all that. But everything we ever know, everything anybody ever knows is within the dragon, within the serpent, within the Ouroboros, within the divine circle. We're trapped in that cosmic, that's the Gnostic, that's Abraxas, and that's what they call the abortion. That Sophia gave birth to Abraxas, the demiurge, and he's an abortion. It's like he wasn't really born as a creative energy. He wasn't born. So therefore, everything he does is imitation. Everything he does is a symbol, is a code. He's not real. He's not a real being. He only imitates. That's Abraxas. That's the one that rules not just the earth and the planets, but actually rules the cosmos. That's an abortion of Sophia wisdom. That's an abortion of Sophia.
How is there a solution to this? What is the solution? Is there one?
Well, as I said to you, when you are initiated in the step pyramid, you graduate step by step from the earth. You come out of the earth, you go in the Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury. And then when you've solved that karmic code, that symbolic code, you step aboard. But you're not free. You're taken via the pole star to the constellations. So you're still within the realm of the gods. You're still within the realm of the animal entities. So if you see a reptilian, the blue avian, it doesn't matter. My question is, I think they're just what you call meta programs. They're super programs, they're meta programs, and they themselves have to be decoded. You have to meet them, and I've met a reptilian.
Okay, you met a reptilian. What was your experience?
Well,
okay.
Yeah. first of all, I'll tell you my first experience. So, I'm a hippie, I squat in London, I'm in lots of communes, I travel around, I just have one change of clothes, I don't have any property, any money. I go from commune to commune, I squat in London. I come back to Oxford, I open a squat, and I meet some people in a little squat, and then I get a room in a house, which has a stained glass window. Above my room is a blue plaque. You know what a blue plaque is?
Apart from somebody famous living there.
Yeah, on a house, there's a blue plaque. So all around England, you've got blue plaques with the name of the person, the famous person that's lived there. It can go back to famous people like Haydn in London. There's a blue plaque to Haydn, the classical person in 1990. So they commemorate people going back hundreds of years. My blue plaque is T.E. Lawrence of Arabia. That's the house of Lawrence of Arabia. That was his family home in the 1920s and 30s. He went to Jesus College in Turl Street, and who else went to Jesus College? Evans Wentz, who did the Secret Doctrine, who brought out the 4 books of Tibetan Buddhism. He lived in the house of Lama Govinda, and that's where I went.
Is that because you're picking up the energies there, or is it something that you're additionally...
Yeah, I mean, it's just part of the program, as you say. It's just a meta program. I mean, I've been programmed since, being born in the Garnet family house, which is the Red Cube. I mean, that was my birthplace. And the Red Cube is the Grail stone, and it's the stone of Horus, etc.
But you have awareness of this. Does this awareness bring you out of the program?
I've been out of the program, but only in my body, immanently, in my psyche body, not in the spirit. So you've got body, psyche, spirit. The spirit is outside of it. The psyche and the body, they're like a loop. You're caught in the matrix, whether you go in your mind and do astral travel, meet entities, you're still in the matrix. And you can travel the world and read all the books, you're still in the matrix. Right, so I'm in this house, stained glass window, blue plaque, T.E. Lawrence. This is quite important. That's where I had my UFO experience. 1975-6, right? I'm in there, 1976. 1975-6, John E. Mack. You know John E. Mack?
The wonderful the late John Mack.
John E. Mack, Harvard professor.
Yes.
He's a literary scholar. He wrote a Pulitzer Prize, that is the Nobel Prize of America, the highest prize, academic prize. He wrote the definitive book on T.E. Lawrence. He wrote the book on T.E. Lawrence in the same year that I was in his house.
That is a coincidence, and there's no such thing as coincidences.
That's major coincidence, major coincidence.
What do you feel that means?
Well, I mean, I go to America, don't I? I mean, I was in America. I was near Harvard. He was at Harvard in Massachusetts. I was down the road in near Boston, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I was just down the road where Betty and Barney Hill had their where they were investigated in Pease Air Force Base, and that's where I worked, and that's where my brother-in-law was an Air Force person. I live right next door to it.
You're dancing around your handbag again, sir. And that means you're being blocked from really getting to the point you want to say. So say it. Let's dig down and see what you really are saying here. You're making all these assertions. You're nearly there. You're almost there, but you're not quite there. What do you think that means?
Well, I'm going to tell you. Right. So I'm in. I come out of the squatting scene. I come out of the hippie scene. I've been in since 1968 in New Paltz. That's where David Wilcox went to university. That's only a few miles from Woodstock, right? A few miles from Woodstock. I left America. I left New York State. I've been to Woodstock. I travelled to Woodstock, the town of Woodstock, more or less was the place where all the bohemians from Greenwich Village, New York, they had their summer homes in Woodstock. So all the kind of pre-hippie beatniks in Greenwich Village in the 30s, 40s, 50s, they had their summer homes in Woodstock. And that's where the great festival with Jimi Hendrix, all of that. And I've been to Woodstock, and New Paltz is just a few miles from Woodstock. And I think Bob Dylan lived at Woodstock, and Bob Dylan, with the band, he cut his music just down the road in Kingston, just where I was living in Portsmouth on the Hudson River that comes out of New York.
What about Laurel Canyon?
I don't know anything about that.
Or Coral Canyon?
No.
Okay, that's California.
Right. The
reason why I mention that is because of the mind control imprinted into the music. This whole thing of that Kathy was talking about.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, good one. Yeah, I see that. And so I'm in New Paltz. I'm into. I took some LSD, took some hashish. I'm become a hippie. All the Haight-Ashbury people from California come there. I'd been to a university, Stony Brook, State University of New York at Stony Brook, where Dan Burrush went, and he was into the yellow cube. I think he was into the yellow cube. Later, I have my red cube experience. So anyway, I'm 1976. I'm in North Oxford, and guess where I'm living? I'm living in a place called Polstead Road. My house is literally on the Woodstock Road. So I come from near Woodstock, and I'm living on the Woodstock Road in Oxford, just there. So I'm living in a room with a stained glass window. You've got T.E. Lawrence's blue plaque above there where he lived. And T.E. Lawrence is the famous spy. He was like a kind of military spy in the Near East. He became a kind of Arab. And so John E. Mack, in the same year I was in Oxford, in Harvard, in Harvard, Massachusetts, which is near Boston, and quite close to Portsmouth, where I worked in the Pease Air Force Base, where Betty and Barney Hill were being investigated for their UFO experience, which is the major connecting experience of the UFO phenomenon, Betty and Barney Hill, in the Interrupted Journey, wasn't it? The Interrupted Journey by John Fowler, and that came out in about I think it was 76.
Okay,
possibly.
So we have sort of slightly covered that. Where is this taking us in terms of your reptilian experiences and UFO experiences?
Yeah, so you got Johnny Mack doing a T. Lawrence biography. I'm living in T. Lawrence's house in Oxford. It's near the Woodstock Road. It's near the place called Woodstock, where Winston Churchill lived in Blenheim Palace. Winston Churchill lived in Blenheim Palace. He became the Prime Minister during World War II. Woodstock is down the road. I live in Woodstock Road. I just came from a place, Newport, near Woodstock.
Okay, hold on here. You've introduced a new character in this. You're introducing Prime Minister of England, Churchill, the whole story there. Why bring him in? He has a UFO thing to say, as he's listed in things about UFOs.
Really?
He made a statement. It was released in some of the papers recently, about 2 or 3 years ago.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So that's why I'm stopping you there. What about Churchill and this connection?
I don't know. I mean, he was born at Blenheim Palace, which is just 10 miles from Oxford, going north towards Banbury. When I came back from America, I lived in Banbury. My mother had a boarding house. I lived in Banbury, went to Banbury.
Yeah, but the super soldier connections, there's the Casbolt thing, Lord Blenheim Palace, all that.
Right, so I went, it's near, between Oxford and Banbury. I came back from America in '69, just before the Woodstock Festival. I lived near Woodstock. I came back from just near Woodstock. I came to my mother. I went to Banbury Art School, and from there I went to. I'm going to tell you something quite. I don't know if I've said this to you, but. I went to Banbury Art School, and from there I decided to go to India, right? I'd read Lama Govinda, the Book of the Dead, all of that. So I hitch a ride, and I get picked up by this kind of old beatnik. He's got long beard, long hair. He's in a green minivan. He picks me up at the Banbury Cross. And Banbury Cross there is a fair lady upon a white horse with rings on her fingers and bells on her toes, and she creates music wherever she goes. So you've got the white horse, which becomes important in my own mythology. So Banbury Cross, the white horse. So I get picked up at Banbury Cross, I leave my mother, leave everybody behind, and I get picked up by this kind of old bohemian. He's a hippie bohemian from the 50s. He's in his 60s. And he said, one day I want to go back to Oxford to live. And that's where I grew up. So he takes me in the green minivan. And he said, would you like to stay the night with me, near London? So I said, yeah, I'm hitching to India. I'm going to India. I'm hitching to India. So he takes me to this house in Richmond, in the Surrey Downs, just south of London, in near Richmond, Surrey Downs. So I go there in the green mini, and we go into this really beautiful kind of Spanish villa. It has an incredible garden, all these mazes. And we take the Great Dane for a walk. We go to the hill, and it's all a lovely Surrey, beautiful area in Surrey, south of London. He said, would you like to meet the owner of the house? And I've got long hair, I'm a hippie and all that. Anyway, he introduces me to this young man who's more or less my age, 25, 24, yeah. 25. Guess who it is?
Yeah, we've mentioned that, Eric Clapton.
Did I mention it?
Yes, you have. So.
Oh, Eric Clapton?
Yes, Eric Clapton.
Oh, I've mentioned this, have I?
Yeah, no, but continue. Where is this bringing you in terms of your UFO connection and your meetings with reptilians? Now I'm going to say this.
Yeah, I was just kind of narrating that. I didn't think I had actually mentioned Eric Clapton.
Yeah. But
I have actually done that.
You have mentioned the Eric Clapton story, on the way to India. Now, the thing about it is, we're going to concentrate on the UFO things on this part. Now,
yeah. So
what's this bringing you to the UFO side of things? When I say dancing around your handbag, it means there's something preventing you from getting to actually what you want to say.
Yeah. Right. Okay. That's interesting. So I've mentioned about Eric Clapton in the White Room.
Yes.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm very sorry. So
but this is important because the White Room, again, it's something that Sarah Stanger and other people have talked about in Austria, in castles. and programming. So
Yeah.
if we're going through some kind of programming recycle to avoid something, I want to hit the nail on the head on this. Okay, are you okay with that?
I heard about the White Room through you, or you interviewed this person, and he talked about his friend in the military going to be more or less brainwashed in this White Room. So you clear the mind so you can go into another level,
Yeah.
And as I say, I have this screen memory of the White Room with the Undertaker, the Underworld Undertaker, near Pease Air Force Base, when I was near Pease Air Force Base, where Betty and Barney Hill
Okay, we're going back to Betty and Barney Hill, and we're going back to this Air Force Base. What happened on the Air Force Base, and what did you do with those computers? You keep going back to that as well. You got a microscope. You're looking at this thing for Apollo, and you don't know what the hell you've been looking at. So what were you looking at down that microscope or whatever it was?
Well, I was told they were chips that would run computers, and they were like microchips. That's all I know.
Well, what was your job to find out what that was?
Yeah, well, I was just soldering. It wasn't a professional. It was just between high school and college. I was just working between high school and college. I was in IBM. I was in an IBM town, Poughkeepsie, which is just north of New York City. I was living in the house with an inventor for IBM. He was a consultant inventor for IBM. So I'm working before I go to Stony Brook in Long Island.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you again. Who was this inventor? What did he say? What experiences did you have with this inventor guy?
Wow.
You're staying in the same house. Well,
yeah.
What happened? What happened there?
It's quite weird, because I can almost feel the consciousness shift at the moment. There's something weird going on. You're right, there is something weird.
You're dancing around your handbag.
Yeah, no, but there's an overlap of memory. There's a definite consciousness gap. There's like a break, and I can't feel
And that's what I'm going to try and get into.
Shifting between levels. I am shifting, and I didn't mean to, because I'm fairly good at sticking on the track. I usually stick on the track. And
your track's bringing you back to the Betty and Barney thing, the Apollo spacecraft, the chips, microchips. What were those chips? Did they move? Did they have intelligence? What do you feel about those chips?
Honestly, I don't know, Miles. I was just in this white room. It's dust-free. I had a white jacket, and I was looking down microscopes. And I was like soldering, just kind of linking the kind of like whatever was on the chip, the diodes, I think diodes and things on the chip.
Okay, so that was using a very, very fine piece of microscopic soldering. You're talking tiny wires.
Yeah, and I really don't know, I can't
Did
really
you see any spiders on the chips?
I can't remember. Did
the chips talk to you?
No.
Get in your head?
No.
Anything at all?
Anything like that.
Because I would suggest they were using you to program those chips with something. You were programming them.
Well, I mean, if you connect the dots, which are seemingly random but are really synchronistic. So if you think of the field, the psychophysical field of experience, the matrix, inner and outer, that's a synchronistic field. That's where synchronicity operates. It operates on a binary code, right? So it operates on a binary code. As I say, my friend, Professor Roderick Main, he's probably the world scholar on synchronicity and Jung. So we've got the psychophysical matrix, which is the infinity sign. So the infinity sign is the 8, the fixed stars. So from the fixed stars, from the constellations, from Orion, the zodiac, they're programming. So you could see that as the meta program.
Yeah, but those chips were going to go to the stars in the spacecraft.
They're meta-programming from the infinity sign, from the fixed stars, the gods the constellations, Orion, etc., Cassiopeia, all of that, they're programming, meta-programming the solar system, right? So if you see the infinities, then you've got the seventh, which is the sun, which rules the solar system. You've got the sun that's ruling the solar system.
How does it rule?
Well, it emanates, doesn't it? It emanates the key of life. It emanates the golden rays, which in the Egyptian...
Yeah, which those gods have above their heads, the Sekhmet gods, and you all talk about the solar, the sun, all that.
Yeah, yeah. You know, you're really pushing me into a part of my psyche that is very, very fuzzy, very, very, very fuzzy. And I'm really trying...
You've brought yourself back to that situation several times in the last couple of hours.
You see, the idea of missing time and all of that, that definitely, because my identity is quite fragile, I think I can slip in and out of things. And I know when I first went to live with the IBM man, I fell asleep. I remember he put on this classical music. It's very interesting. He put on this classical music, and I was never into classical music, right? He put on this classical music, and I fell asleep.
What did he do with you?
And then I woke up, and they were sitting around, the wife and the husband and the son. The son that went to Vietnam, he's the one that took me to see Leary. The son took me to see Leary.
The thing about Vietnam is we're now getting stories of giant spiders coming out of portals in Hindu temples. And that's what they were really fighting. So he must have had some connection with that.
And
what were the people doing when you woke up? What state were they in, and how were they arranged in the room?
Laughing. They were like looking at me and laughing, because that music, the first classical music, and he put it on, and I went to sleep just like that. Just fell asleep on the floor.
Well, I mean, it sounds that's very, you've been triggered. Somebody's done that deliberately.
Quite weird. And it is all very fuzzy what you're doing, what you're pushing me into, because you're the first one that's doing that. And
yeah, it's as blatant that they triggered you, they programmed you, and you must have been programmed for that music to start with.
When I went to see, so the son of that IBM person evidently went to Vietnam. I don't know whether he went to Vietnam. I don't know that. But evidently he went to Vietnam. But he might be part of it. He might be part of the process.
Well, the whole point of the Vietnam thing is that they're dealing with interdimensional 8-legged things that they were actually fighting then.
Right. Yeah.
Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but this is what's coming out in the present time, August 2017, and it's big spiders and stuff like that, things from deep within the earth you're talking about, and there's a lot of noise coming up on the headphones right at now, but there's something in the deep earth, and you're talking about creatures of the matrix of some kind, being programmed, and I'm beginning to get a bit nervous. I don't know why, but no, this noise is significant. It only happens when you start getting to areas you shouldn't maybe get to. Okay, I've given you a little bit of time to think there. What's your next thought?
Right. So I'm in T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, and Johnny Mack, in 1976, writes a definitive book. He writes the definitive biography of Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, we've had that. Yeah. So continue.
Right. Yeah. So I didn't come across Johnny Mack until 1998 when I read his work Abduction, and that was just at the time I had my third UFO experience. That's when I had my third UFO experience, when I was reading his book. So I'm in T. Lawrence's house, and I'm sitting in the dark. I like to sit. I've never meditated. I've never practiced any religion or anything like that. I'm sitting in the dark. I'm looking out of the window, the back window, at the garden. 30 feet away are trees that are probably about 30 feet tall. They're 30 feet tall. Above those trees, a light appears, right? A light appears. Remember, I know nothing about UFOs. I've never, ever
Yeah, but this is your third UFO experience.
No,
What I mean, if your third experience.
No, first.
I think you said third.
No, I said that my third was when I was reading Johnny Mack's Abduction, when I was here in Colchester. But my first UFO experience is North Oxford, T. Lawrence's house. I'm looking out of the window. A light appears above the trees, and I don't see a beam of light. It's just a small white light, and it penetrates into my left eye. It penetrates deep into my brain, right into my soul, as it were, right into my private world. So it's touching me very, very personally. You know, it's almost like it's come into my private world inside me. In fact, it's touching me, the identity, me, right? It's touching my identity. I look at it, I'm very fascinated. I find it very interesting what this thing is. I have no idea that it's a UFO. So I'm very interested, coming through the left eye, and which is the eye of the unconscious. But it's coming through the left eye. It's the moon eye. Remember, the unconscious, the moon eye, the eye of Thoth, the moon god. So it's going through the eye, deep into my brain, deep into my psyche. So it's going right through me to the very end. And I think, wow, this is incredible, you know. And I'm a bit nervous, but not frightened. And then I see the white light moved from the left, it moves to the right. So it's moving to me above the trees to the right, just a little bit. And inside me, in my psyche, it's going from my left eye to my right eye. And I think, wow, this is making me nervous. You know, something is making me nervous. It's going from my left eye to my right eye, deep inside me. And and then it was going to go back to my left eye, and I thought, I can't take this. This is like really intrusive. This is really getting at me. You know, it's like touching me. You know, you might say my identity, myself, not my true self, but myself. So I get up and draw the curtains, and that's the end of my first experience. I don't know it's a UFO. That's the end of my experience. And I don't have a bad feeling. I don't have a negative feeling. I felt a bit of fear. But remember, I've been in the void. I've experienced terror. I know terror. So I know that. But this was positive. I would say the outcome of that was very positive. I felt very positive.
Excellent. So proceeding on. So
that's where Johnny Mack, he wrote the book, and that links to Johnny Mack.
Was there a particular case in the book which that made you feel something familiar when you were reading Mack's book? Well, now that was about on T. Lawrence, or the abduction one?
No. Well, this is 76 North Oxford. And when I was living in America, Portsmouth, that was only a few miles, not far from Harvard, where Johnny Mack was. So even then I was close to Johnny Mack's place. I was just down the road from Harvard in Massachusetts. I was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, just near Boston, Massachusetts. So that links again, I'm quite close to him. That's where Betty and Barney Hill had their abduction. So that links Mack to Barney and Betty Hill. He's just down the road from there. So I'm in 76. Right.
Before we go on, have you been interviewed by Veronica Ford Keane?
No.
Okay, she has a connection with Max. She identified him in the morgue. Okay. She's
right,
and Montague Keane, yeah, okay.
He was killed in England, that's interesting as well.
Yeah, he was killed up in Barnet, Totteridge.
Right, okay.
So, and he was staying in the house of Veronica Ford Keane at the time.
Really?
Yeah. Who
So
is the widow of Montague Keen.
who's Montague King?
Montague Keen, we're doing old school people now. He died famously on camera in the beside his wife while he was being asked a question on television. But he was also infiltrating a sect of Jewish people, and they're finding out about their schemes and about what they're going to do with the rest of us in North London, in England. I mean, he was a lord. He was in the House of Lords and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that some certain Jewish elements are Nephilim infiltrators, along with the reptilians and all the rest of the damn thing.
Well, I when I left high school, I left Arlington High School, 1964. I moved out of the IBM household. I got a room, and my room was in a Jewish house. And he worked for IBM. He was an engineer for IBM.
Yeah.
Because they're all IBM people.
Yeah, but the key to this is that now the Jews are being conned by their own rabbis, and this comes from a rabbi, that they are creating what would they have described, this rabbi described, whilst the rest of the rabbis in the room are not aware of this as such, that they're basically creating a subspace universe or matrix. It's described graphically as like a fish tank in an ocean, where they will take their people from this domain into that and rule in that domain.
Can I bring something in?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole point.
Very, very, very strange happened last night in my dreams to do with Jewish, exactly what you're talking about. Something very strange happened. And he was an IBM person. The person I lived with before was an IBM person. And I can't remember my dream, but it was very layered and related to what you're saying. Quite freaky.
This is the creation of a subspace matrix where we will be ruled by these beings who have been deleted from existence. Their penalties are so supreme on this round of the loop that the only way they're going to try and survive is to create a subspace domain. That's to say, the analogy is a fish tank in the ocean, where they will then rule in that domain and try to restrict any impact on their survival by migrating to that domain. That's basically, and I'm not saying that is happening, that's basically the concept involved here. And the IBM computer technology is a device to use our consciousness to create that. We will create that. But bearing in mind, it's a Trojan technology accessing our consciousness.
Yeah. The thing is, Miles, as you're talking, I'm getting freaked out. And I don't get freaked out, not now, in these days, I don't get freaked out. I'm having layers of information coming from my dream life last night. Everything you're saying is like ringing all these bells, and it's freaking me out a bit. What you're saying about this and the Jewish people.
No, I'm not saying all the Jewish people, they're being conned. This is their own rabbis talking.
No, this programming, I believe you've opened up, and I thought this might happen. I was hoping you're opening up the MyLab level in me, the programming level. You're actually the first one that's freaking me out.
Are you okay with that?
Freaking me out.
I mean, do you want to stop? Do you want to take a rest?
No, that freaking out doesn't bother me, Miles. No, you're the first one that's opened this door, and I can see layers and layers. And last night in the dreams, there were layers and layers and layers and layers. And I can't believe what you're revealing to me. It's like it's like a book of knowledge that is necessary for me to make the next step. I've got to get through this meta-programming. It's meta-programming. And I've got to get through this meta-programming. And as I'm talking to you, I'm getting a download of so much knowledge. You can't believe it, man. You can't believe it. And you've done that before with people.
I have. Well,
It's freaky, man. It's really, and I'm using the hippie language, but it's really, really, really freaky for me.
Well, do you want to rest? Do you want to take that in? Is
Oh,
any?
no, man. It's really, I'm just blown away. I'm blown away, man. And I've been through so much in my life, and I'm almost in tears now. It's way out, man. I thank you for that. No, it's brilliant.
Well,
This is what I was hoping, man. This is what I was really, really, I needed to move from my knowledge, book knowledge, into real knowledge. That's book knowledge. Now I'm into wisdom, real knowledge. And I've had things last night about you, about layers and layers and layers of knowledge. Incredible.
Well, if it helps, do you want to tell people about me? God help us.
I can't say about you at the moment, but the programming that I'm experiencing now is so fantastic. And don't forget, I'm well read in all mythology, and I believe I've discovered the original, I believe I've discovered the original template of the Egyptians. I've actually unearthed the real Egyptian mythology.
Now, are you talking about the Nephilim who took over the pyramids, because they did not build those pyramids? Those who built the pyramids have been taken. They cannot ever come back.
You're blowing my mind, I tell you, man. I've never, ever experienced this in my life. You're opening up. I'm saying this absolutely because I'm very knowledgeable on these things. So I'm not saying this lightly, Miles. This is incredible. This is the most fantastic thing that's ever happened to me.
Well, I want to step very carefully. I want you to continue.
No, I'm not kidding you, man. This is the most way out moment in my life. I'm in tears, man. This is fantastic.
I feel that it's best that you continue to experience this, but it may be...
No, Miles, I might just go off right now. I'm not kidding you, man. You've blown it. I'm not kidding you, man. You've really, really, really blown it. For the planet. I'm talking about the planet. The things I've had downloaded last night in those dreams is the whole Bible. It's like a Bible, and it's all in my head, and I can't even begin to explain it. Because I have to meet you, and I have to document what I know, because it's way out. This is another Bible, if you will. I need a lot of time. I
think I'm going to draw this to a close for now. I think I'll be dropping up to see you then.
Yeah, I want you to quickly, because you'll see things here, man. Things that happen here.
Well, what I want to do is I want to download this onto the computer. I've got things I've got to do in the next few days. I won't be able to get back for a few days. I don't want to timestamp this too much, but I think that's a good point to pause.
We're still on air, are we?
We are still recording, but I want to edit this and get it out as soon as possible, preferably tonight.
The energy and the emotions that I'm experiencing are so ecstatic. So ecstatic. Wow. I mean, really, man, this is like the beginning of what I've been looking for. This is like my new beginning. This is going to be an incredible journey. That's what I feel.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, this is it, man, for me. 72, and I've been 50 years in the spiritual life. I've just come out of the cocoon, just come out of the phoenix egg, and you do it right within a few months. I can't put it into words, man.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, well, I am going to end it now. And we'll pick it up in part 3, hopefully in person. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, bless you, sir. Good to meet you. And this is Basis 73 for now.